Hi everyone. I am Rushita Shah and I am a third year MBBS student from BJ Medical College, Ahmedabad. I gave my NEET in 2020 September. I started preparing for it in 2018 during the initiation of 11th standard. So basically, I did a coaching and I had so regarding my journey, as I said, I did coaching in 11th and 12th, but I had a habit of reading and solving questions then and there. So जैसे ही एक एक chapter खत्म होता था, I would do the previous year questions also. बहुत सारे लोगों की ऐसी हैबिट है कि वो प्रीवियस ईयर क्वेश्चंस दे कीप इट टिल द लास्ट कि व्हेन एवरीथिंग इज डन देन वी विल डू इट which I feel is not so correct क्योंकि the more you do previous year questions, uh, the more number of times you do it, the more you will get used to it, the more you'll know कि हाँ ऐसी चीजें they ask in NEET, these things they don't ask. So you should have a clarity there. So I did previous year questions along with the chapters and I think that helped me a lot. Also, I am the COVID batch student, so 2020 student. So yeah, I was lucky that I got 4 months extra. NEET was held in September in 2020. So for me, COVID was a boon, not for everyone. For some people, it was a disadvantage that they had to study longer. For me, COVID was a good thing because that way I could prepare more, I could read more, I had more time to revise, and maybe that's the reason I scored 680 out of 720 in NEET 2020 and got an AIQ of 673. So yeah, for preparation, I made a mistake, I think, of giving more importance to modules during the initial stages, like during the 11th and the starting few months of 12th. But then as the time progressed, I realized that NCRT is more important than the modules. So I started reading NCRT at a very later stages, which was a mistake, but I was lucky that I had 4 months extra to prepare. You guys won't have it, so have a habit of reading NCRT from the first day for all the three subjects: physics, chemistry. NCRT is also important. If you have looked at the previous year papers, you will know that there are theory questions which are directly from NCRT. In chemistry, organic, inorganic is also directly from NCRT in the past few years. So it's better if you have a habit of reading it. That way, it will be easier for you to do the previous year questions as well as in your main exam. The module or the supplements you use are good for building concepts because NCRT doesn't have some things clearly, I agree to it, but just relying on them and then ignoring NCRT is wrong. And for bio, NCRT is the Bible, everyone says it, and I can't stress it more. It is the Bible, and if you just do NCRT, I guarantee you'll get 330 out of 360 for sure, just by the NCRT. And the other 30 marks are also, it's not like it is outside the NCRT, but it has some concepts or some things where you need to think outside the box. It is of NCRT, but you need to apply your mind, your logic, and you can even score full by doing NCRT. In the last few months, I've just done NCRT, no other supplements, just the NCRT and the previous year questions and many tests. Tests can be in the form of online tests. It can be in the form of giving previous year papers as your test. But test questions, repetition is the only key. There's no shortcut. There's no there's no like a magic, but there's only pure hard work. So I feel that's the only key if you want to land in a good medical school. And after the NEET, if I talk about, there are many people who, I don't know, but many of you may have heard कि once you complete NEET, your life is set. NEET कर लो, then it's all easy, it's all good. फिर you don't have to worry. फिर कुछ और नहीं, फिर you don't have to work hard. Many people say that, but it's a myth. ऐसा नहीं है. After completing your NEET, even if you land in a government college, even if you land in your dream college, but then too you need to work extra hard. MBBS as a journey is also not easy. So if you are doing NEET or if you are giving NEET or if you're preparing for NEET, just the movies. It's fantasy. It's nothing like the real world. So build your expectations that way, and it will be easier for you. You won't regret it then. But if you have your expectations so high, then once you enter it, you will be like, oh, this is not what I thought. So if you are someone who wants to help people, if you're someone who wants to treat people, and if you're someone that when an ambulance go on road, you pray that, oh, the person in the ambulance should get well, then MBBS is definitely for you. Then all this hard work, all the 2 years are worth it. But if you're just that you just want a good career, then be prepared for the hard working, for the dedication, even after NEET. NEET is just a start point. MBBS is a very long journey, very hard journey. Yeah, one good thing is you will have a certainty of your career. After you cross your NEET, after you enter the MBBS, you will be certain that you are gonna be a doctor. So yeah, you will have the security of your career. That's a good part. But hard work, dedication, sacrifices, even in the MBBS journey, are a part of your life. It's not like the commerce or the engineering colleges where you go out often, where you don't have to study, where you study one night before the exam. It doesn't work like that here. And I'm saying it by my experience. All the people's experience who are with me, who are my seniors, who are my juniors. So yeah, about my journey, that's that. If you want to ask anything in particular about my journey, you're free to. So the first question was why the enzymes don't degrade. So this is a botany question. Enzymes are basically the outermost layer of a pollen grain is known as enzymes. So they are made of a protein known as sporopollenin, and that protein there is a biologically inert polymer. So biologically inert polymers are the polymers where anything, not any enzymes, not acids, not catalysts, no one can degrade it. They are structurally and physiologically made that way so that it prevents the pollen grain from destruction, and then thus helps in pollination. So just because of its structure, because of the sporopollenin protein, it does not get degraded. Okay. Then the second question is about why do the lungs not collapse between the breaths, and why is there air always trapped inside the lungs even after being fully exhaled? So what is the reason? This was the question. So for this question, our lungs are anatomically made in such a way that even after forceful maximum expiration, there is a certain volume of lungs, a certain volume of air, sorry, which is known as reserve or the residual volume. So this amount of volume can never get exceeded, can never get expired. Even if you die, this amount of air would always remain in the lungs. So this is a anatomical, I would say, mechanism made so the lungs do not collapse. The lungs would collapse if all the amount of air in it would get expired when we breathe out. Then the lungs would collapse because the alveoli won't have any pressure which would hold it. But the reserve volume is made in such a way that it fills the lungs even after we forcefully expire, so that the lungs do not collapse. So this is the answer for the second one. Then the third question is the physiological changes that occurs in the body in high altitude. So when there is high altitude, when we go to mountains or any such places, uh, the most important factor which plays role here is the partial pressure of oxygen. So uh, as we go higher, the partial pressure of oxygen decreases. So as compared to the sea level, it decreases as we go higher. And logically, if the partial pressure of oxygen is low, well, we cannot inhale the maximum amount of oxygen which we could at the sea level. As compared to that, it would be decreased. So obviously, to compensate that, body would need to have certain mechanisms, right? If we don't have mechanisms, if we inhale less oxygen, the bodily functions, the metabolic functions would obviously be hampered. So to compensate for that, our body first, if it's for an acute period, like if it's for an hours or minutes, we are at the higher altitude, the first mechanism would be hyperventilation. What is hyperventilation? It means breathing in and out more number of times. So it increases the number of breaths you take. So the first mechanism would be your body will uh, increase your number of breaths. What that would do is you can inhale more oxygen, because if you breathe more number of times, more oxygen can reach your body, your lungs. Then the second mechanism would be, it would increase number of your red blood cells. So red blood cells, as you know, would carry hemoglobin, and hemoglobin is the carrier of oxygen throughout our body. So if you increase the number of RBCs, your oxygen content would automatically be increased due to increased hemoglobin. Then thirdly, it will increase the production of an hormone called erythropoietin, which is secreted by our kidneys. That hormone also helps in increasing the number of RBCs. So that way, your RBCs and your hemoglobin and thus your oxygen will get increased. And because you're hyperventilating, because you're increasing the number of breaths you take per minute, you are also giving out more carbon dioxide. As you inhale more O2, you also give out more CO2, right? So that way, even the waste which are produced in your body would be eliminated faster by your body. So these are the basic mechanisms which you need to know at your level, which is also given in NCERT, I guess, very nicely, about the altitude changes in the body. Then the fourth question is, how is the concentration of carbon dioxide in the blood monitored and regulated by our body? So carbon dioxide, as oxygen flows in all the organs of our body, right? All the waste materials, etc., flows in the CO2, and the CO2 flows in the veins. So carbon dioxide, the most prominent mechanism is, it determines the hydrogen ion concentration of our body and the pH. So pH is if your CO2 content in the body is more, your pH would decrease, means it would be acidic. Your blood would become acidic. So the blood, uh, when it becomes acidic, your body has certain mechanisms to monitor, to control it. Your body has mechanisms which can sense that, oh, the pH is lower, it is acidic, which it should not be, right? So your these sense organs are known as chemoreceptors. So they would be activated once your CO2 level is increased, your hydrogen ions are increased, or your pH decreases. These chemoreceptors get activated, and they sense it, and they send the signals to your brainstem. So your pons, they are the there is the respiratory center of our body in the brainstem, in the brain. So your pons get activated and you hyperventilate. Hyperventilation again is increasing the number of breaths per minute. So once logically, if you hyperventilate, you give out more CO2, right? So that way it will sense that the CO2 content is more, and you uh, increase the number of breaths per minute, you give out more CO2, and thus the physiologic homeostasis is maintained. And same way, if your CO2 decreases, that is also sensed by your chemoreceptors, and then it would hypoventilate, means you would breathe less number of times in a minute. So that way the CO2 would be retained and your pH would be maintained. Your pH has to be maintained at a certain range, and for that it needs CO2 regulation. So CO2 content should not be high, as well should not be low, for your pH to be maintained in the certain range. The next question is, what is the function of lymphatic system and how does it maintain fluid balance in the body? Okay, so lymphatic system is basically a collection of vessels in your bodies, which drains a clear colorless fluid. It is present throughout your body, and the lymphatic systems has many functions. It is listed very nicely in NCERT points wise. It helps in defense of the body. Lymphatic systems contains a fluid known as lymph, and that fluid has a can detect foreign bodies if there are any infections. It is a source of releasing WBCs in the blood, and that way it can help you fight against infections. So it is a immune mediator of your body. It is a line of defense in your body. So it is firstly, and the most important function of the lymphatic systems is its defense. Then the second function is it helps in absorption of fats. So the fats which are broken down by our pancreatic enzymes, then they are released in the lymph. And through the lymph, it travels through the body and gets stored. So the second important function is the absorption of fat. Then the third function is it regulates the body volume. So lymph can release fluid and can also absorb fluid from your arteries, from your veins, from your blood basically. So it regulates and retains fluid when needed. So if your blood volume, for example, if your fluid volume of the body increases, means your blood volume increases. So your body cannot accumulate all the blood, right? So it needs to go somewhere. So lymph absorbs the fluid from your blood and stores it. And when your blood pressure, for example, decreases, when you are dehydrated, when you suffer from burns, so that time the lymph would release the fluid into the plasma, to the blood. And that way it regulates the blood volume, the fluid volume of the body. Okay, then the next question is, what is the role of plasma in the blood and what are its components? So our blood is made up of two things, plasma and the cells. So plasma is basically the fluid part. The colorless fluid of the blood is called plasma, and the cells are WBC, RBC, platelets, all of that. So these two components make up the blood. And plasma is that component which contains water, salts, the clotting factors of our body, the proteins of our body, albumin, most importantly. All these contents of the body, the fluid contents are stored in the plasma. And the cells are just the solid materials, the red blood cells, the white blood cells, and the platelets. So plasma plays a role in the osmolarity of the body, the clotting of the body. If you suffer from any injury, the clots are found by the help of the clotting factors present in the plasma. Then the protein concentration of the body is also regulated by your plasma. So that way plasma helps. Then the next question is, describe the process of blood clotting and the factors that regulate it. So blood clotting is basically a physiological mechanism of our body in response to any injury. So whenever we have a cut, whenever we get hurt, and whenever blood flows out from any wounds, so that time the body has certain mechanisms to prevent the loss of blood, because blood is a very important plant, and we don't want it to get wasted. So clotting is basically that mechanisms, and it is very complex process. At your level, there are certain coagulation cascades which have to be met to for us clot to be formed. So if I concise it, vitamin K, which is present in our liver, that is the initiation point of clotting. So vitamin K is released in response to any injury, and then vitamin K releases certain factors, which is the coagulation cascade, and that helps in the clotting of the blood. So the coagulation cascade is also divided into two parts, extrinsic and the intrinsic pathway. So the extrinsic pathway means extrinsic is something which is outside the body, right? So the damage to the skin, the endothelium, the injury, that is the extrinsic part. That activates certain factors like factor 3, factor 10, factor 2. Uh, these are 1 to 12 factors are there for coagulation. You can read about it in supplementary materials. It's not given in NCERT. because it's too high for your level. But it would be given in all the supplementary materials you read. So 1 to 12 are 12 coagulation pathway factors, and intrinsic pathway, extrinsic pathway here initiates the production of factor 3, factor 10, factor 2, and factor 1. And these factors get initiated, and the fibrin clot is formed. Clot is basically a polymer of fibrin. Fibrin is a protein, and clot is formed of fibrin polymer. And the intrinsic pathway, the other pathway is the intrinsic pathway that is regulated by the mechanisms inside your body. So once you get hurt, many proteins like collagen, then many enzymes get released. And they also initiate the secretion of many factors like factor 12, factor 11, factor 9, factor 10, factor 5, factor 2, and factor 1. So all these factors play a role. All these factors get initiated sequentially, and then the clot of fibrin is formed. So that is the coagulation pathway. This was a very short description. It is a very long, complicated pathway. And if you are interested in knowing, you can read it. You can watch YouTube videos, but at your level, this won't be asked. Only vitamin K and its importance in the pathways you should know for NEET. Other than that, it is not required at your level for the examination point of view. The next question is, how does kidney maintain the balance of fluid and electrolytes in the body? So, kidney is the organ which maintains the osmolarity of our body. It maintains the fluid volume. It maintains the electrolyte volume, the sodium, potassium, glucose, all the metabolites, all the uh, uh, electrolytes are maintained by the kidney. So kidneys have a structure known as nephrons, and nephrons have many parts in it. The structure of nephron is a very, very important topic. The diagram given is also very important. It is asked many times in NEET. The function of all the parts is also very important. I won't go into the detail of the anatomy of the structure. The physiologically, the function is nephrons. There's a afferent arteriole. From that, the blood enters the nephron, the unit of kidney, right? And once the blood entering the nephron is obviously rich in everything: potassium, sodium, all the wastes, urea, glucose, and the kidney decides which ion it needs to reabsorb and which ion it needs to secrete out in the urine. So as the blood passes the nephron, the ions which are important to our body are absorbed, like sodium is absorbed, bicarbonates are absorbed, water is absorbed, glucose is absorbed, and the ions which are not required, like urea, wastes, if we take any medicines, that potassium, hydrogen ions, they are not required by our body. So they are excreted. So based on the concentration gradient, certain ions are absorbed by the nephron and it is passed into the blood, and the ions which are not needed are excreted and passed into the collecting duct, and then thus it goes into the urine. And the water regulation is done in such a way that the kidneys detect the water present in the body. If your the concentration of water present in the body is high, then your urine will have a more amount of water because your body doesn't need it. But if the content of water is less in your body, the urine will be concentrated. The content of water in urine would be less. So that way the kidney decides and functions and balances the fluid. The next question was process of reabsorption and secretion that I said in the kidney thing. It's the same. The next question is process of micturition, means urination, and how it is controlled by the nervous system. So process of micturition or urination means the process of secreting urine out of your body through your urethra. That is urination, right? So there are many mechanisms by which it gets controlled. Obviously, there are autonomic controls. Autonomic means you can, your body involuntarily controls, you cannot control it, but your body, the internal organs will control it. Then voluntary control means you can have a control on when you want to urinate, when you don't want to urinate. So here it's asked about the nervous system, how it is controlled. So there is an autonomic reflex which is sent by your urinary bladder. Urinary bladder is the structure which collects your urine, right? So there are muscles in your urinary bladder called detrusor muscles, and that muscles would send signals to your brainstem, and your brainstem would uh, analyze those signals. It would coordinate and then would send the efferent fibers, and those fibers would decide if your urethral sphincters would contract or relax. So if your sphincters would relax, you would not be able to pass your urine. And if your sphincters are relaxed, you would be able to pass your urine. So your brain will see in which situation are you there, if it is the right place to pass urine. And that way the fibers would send signals, and that way the sphincters would react. And that's the mechanism by which involuntarily you would urinate or not. But there are also obviously the interventions of your voluntary system. So that way your voluntary body would also send different signals to your brain, and both the signals get combined, and the end product is the micturition which we do is the end product of the complex mechanism of our voluntary control and of the autonomic control. And that way it is decided when and how you will micturate or urinate. Then the next question is the sliding filament theory of muscle contraction and the role of ATP in the muscle contraction. So the sliding filament theory is a theory by which uh, it is a basic theory proposed by many scientists which determines how there is contraction of our body, the contraction of our muscles. So this theory defines that. So it basically there is a mechanism through which your body can contract when it needs to. So for that you need to know the structures which are present in contraction: actin filaments, the myosin filaments, the troponin I, troponin T, troponin C. All these are proteins which are structures helping in contraction. This is also given in NCRT. So the structures you need to be very familiar with. Then only you will be able to know the process and the function and the physiology of how it's getting uh, contracted, the mechanism behind it. So basically there are two filaments, the actin and the myosin filaments. These both are proteins, and the actin filament is covered by the troponin proteins. So whenever our muscles are relaxed, when it is not contracting, the head of the actin filament will be covered by all these proteins: troponin I, troponin T, and troponin C. Then when you want to contract a muscle, or when your body wants your muscle to be contracted, the myosin filament comes into the picture. The myosin filament would displace the troponin protein from the actin head and would bind to the actin. So the binding of the actin and the myosin is the reason why contraction occurs. The main mechanism is the binding of the actin and the myosin filament. And when the binding occurs, that is the time when the role of ATP comes in place. So that time ATP would be released. ATP hydrolase enzyme would be functional, and ATP would be released. And the breaking of ATP would bring out the contraction. So here is the role of ATP. So if your ATP is not present in the body, then even after binding of actin and the myosin filaments, the contraction wouldn't occur. Once the ATP is broken down, the contraction occurs. And after the ATP is broken down, after the contraction occurs, the actin and the myosin filament again, they get separated. And that time our body relaxes, the muscle relaxes. When they get separated, it relaxes, and when the bridge is formed, the muscles contract. So once it is released, again ATP molecule is formed. So this way contraction relaxation coupling occurs. When the ATP is formed, it gets stored, and again when there's a need for contraction, again the troponin filaments they move out of actin head, and again the myosin gets binded to the actin head, and that way the contraction occurs physiologically. The next question is role of ligaments and tendons in the skeletal system. So, what are ligaments? Ligaments are the structures which connect two bones. So there are many bones in the body, right? 206 bones are present in our body. So bones as such cannot move. They need help of something which can help them move between each other. So ligaments are the structures which are present between two bones or cartilages. And what are tendons? Tendons are the structures present between a bone and a muscle. So this clarification, this separation should be very clear of what a bone is, what a ligament is, and what a tendon is. This is also asked directly many times if you see previous papers. Definition of a ligament, definition of tendon. So this should be clear. And the functioning of both is same. Bones or muscles on their own cannot move. And when we do movements, when we walk, when we talk, when we move our hands, when we touch something, when we grasp something, in all these places, you need your muscles and bones to move. So ligaments and tendons are the structures which make your muscles and your bones move. They act as a pulley between your bones or your muscles. So because of their presence, you can move, you can bend your muscles, your bones. So that's their function. They also have many other minimal functions like protection of your bones or muscles from injury. Then uh, they keep a check that your bones or muscles are not moved more than they should. They regulate how much movement is done. So uh, these are all the functions of the ligaments or the tendons. The important part is you know what is the difference between the two and you know their structure. That is important for the NEET perspective of it, obviously. Then the next question is how to learn chemical control and coordination and neural control and coordination. Okay, these are the two largest chapters I think in human physiology in 11th NCRT. I agree both of them are a bit difficult not because it has rocket science in it, difficult because it has too much of logic in it. The other chapters of bio are something which can mug up. These chapters need understanding and logical thinking. So I would advise you watch videos on these chapters. Once you know how things work, once you know the mechanism, like many questions, previous 2-3 questions were of neural and chemical control and coordination only. So once you know how they work, once you see the mechanism, once you see the diagrams, then you won't need to memorize it. You won't need to mug it up. You would understand it and your questions will be done very easily. Even if you read NCRT, the diagrams in NCRT are very nice. Certain diagrams of this sliding filament theory, contractions, then diagrams of all the enzymes, all the enzymes and all the nerve endings were there, all the bones, the skeleton system bones were there. All that diagrams are very helpful. So before reading the theory of NCRT, if you have a look at the diagram, if you read the description below the diagram of what it is, and then if you read the theory part of NCRT, that way it would be much better. Also, you can see videos of the topics you feel difficulty in. That's the only way. And yeah, for questions, the more questions you do, the more clarity you will get about the things. So if you do the questions of neural and chemical coordination, then you would know that, oh, this is us, this is not us, this is the way a certain topic is asked in questions, this is the way the options are formed. That would come only by doing more and more questions. So previous questions or the questions which are followed chapter wise, that questions you will get very easily online, or if you have any books from where you do these questions, that would help, I think. If you do only that much, it would be sufficient, and if you do only NCERT, then it is more than enough for these chapters, for all the chapters in bio in general, but for these chapters especially, only NCERT is enough. You do it nicely, line to line. If you understand and do it, do the diagrams, you will score really good, I guess. The next question is the role of parathyroid hormone in the calcium homeostasis in the human body. Okay, I don't think it's given in much of the detail in your NCRT, but then too, I'll explain it briefly. It is not needed, I guess, at your level. Only certain questions of what it does are asked. So the parathyroid hormone is released by the parathyroid glands. Parathyroid glands are located above your thyroid glands. And these hormone, its basic function is increasing the blood calcium level. So from anything of the body it gets, it increases the level of your blood calcium. For that, it will extract the calcium from your bone, it will absorb calcium from your intestines, it will get calcium from your kidneys. Whatever it can do, it will do just to increase your blood calcium level. This is the basic one-line function of the PTH hormone. So you can guess the side effects. If you extract calcium from your bones are obviously gonna get weaker, right? So that way, the parathyroid hormone makes your bones susceptible to fractures. Same way, more calcium you extract from your intestine or your kidneys, over time it is obviously gonna harm your organs if it is not regulated. But if it is regulated by other hormones, then it won't be a problem. So the basic function is absorbing all the calcium and increasing the level of calcium of your body. So whenever your body detects that your calcium level is below the normal range, it increases the secretion of this parathyroid hormone and it increases your body calcium levels. So that's that. The next question is the role of hypothalamus in hormonal regulation in the human body. So the hypothalamus is known as the master of the master gland, and it regulates all the hormones of your body. So hypothalamus basically secretes inhibiting or stimulating hormones of everything. Like if there is growth hormone, right? So hypothalamus would secrete growth hormone releasing hormone or growth hormone inhibiting hormone. So that way, if releasing hormone is secreted, growth hormone releasing hormone is secreted, your pituitary would secrete more growth hormone, and there would be increase of growth hormone secretion in your body. If it's vice versa, if it's inhibition hormone secreted by your hypothalamus, the pituitary would not secrete growth hormone and your body would have less growth hormone in its system. So that way, hypothalamus has releasing or inhibiting hormones for all of the hormones present in our body, gonadotropin, and then growth hormone, ACTH, all the hormones present in our body have a inhibiting or releasing hormone. So it is the master which secretes all the hormones, which regulates the secretion of all the hormones. And if the content of the hormones increase in your bloodstream, then it will send a negative feedback to your hypothalamus. So that way it would secrete inhibiting hormones, so the secretion stops. So it is a cycle where the hypothalamus is the chief factor which determines the concentration of hormones in the body. Then the next question is the role of neurotransmitters in the neural communication. So in the neural communication, for your nerves to send messages, it needs certain transmitters, it needs certain molecules which can help in secretion, which can help in signaling the body. So the transmitters can be of many types: acetylcholine, norepinephrine, epinephrine, serotonin, dopamine. I don't know how many of these you know. It would come at higher stages of your studies. But I think in NCRT is only the name of neurotransmitters is given, nothing else. So not going in the detail, the transmitters are basically molecules, or you can say, structures, proteins, which are secreted by the synaptic vesicles, which are secreted basically by your nerves. And these secretions will determine which function of your body is to be carried out. Like if you have your stomach, so your stomach can contract or your stomach can relax. So, in the situation where you are in, your body will send certain of these transmitters like adrenaline, noradrenaline, and that would determine if your stomachs would need to be contracted at the moment or relaxed at the moment. So that way, by a secretion of these transmitters, there are receptors for these transmitters, right? So once they sense that, oh, this secretion, this molecule is attached to our endings, now we need to function that way. So all your visceral organs are in the control of this nervous system and these transmitters. And for your muscles also, calcium is released as a neurotransmitter in the muscle, and that calcium determines the contraction. So if the calcium content is high, and so your muscles would contract. If the calcium content is low, your muscles would relax. So that's the role of transmitters. What are the different types of sensory receptors and how do they detect stimuli? This is the next question. So there are many types of sensory receptors. Um, it is not given in NCERT and I don't think it is important. I don't, previously, like before 2025 years, questions were there on these types of receptors, but not recently because it's not given in NCERT anymore. So there are many receptors like Morgell's disc, Ruffinius discs, and then Passation corpuscles, then nerve-free nerve endings. These are types of receptors. So basically, receptors are the structures which detects the stimuli, which detects anything of the environment. So these receptors, there are different receptors for different stimuli. Like for pain, there is a different receptor. For pressure, for touch, for light, for deep pressure, for movement, for angles, for all the different stimuli, there are different receptors. The classification you do not need to know at your level. If you want to read, you can go read. So the receptors I mentioned, all these receptors have different stimuli in them. And according to the stimuli received by our body, the receptors get activated. And these receptors then send a signal to your brain or your spinal cord, and the spinal cord senses that signal, it analyzes, it coordinates with the signal for the brain, and then it sends an efferent fiber, and your body reacts that way. So if suppose you by mistake touch a hot pan, your body reflexly would take your hand away from it. So that involves a complex process of your body sensing the heat by the receptor, sending it to your brain sensing it, coordinating that, oh, this is a negative stimuli for the body, it will harm the body, and your brain then uh, uh, telling your hand to just, contract and just take away from the pan. So this complex is followed, and the role of the receptors is here in sensing the stimuli from the environment. Okay, the next question is, what is the role of autonomic nervous system in the regulation of physiological processes? So autonomic system is the major system. It is the most important system which can regulate the processes of our body, because all the organs, the visceral organs, all the internal organs of our body are not in our voluntary control. We cannot move them. We cannot uh, control them when we want. It is controlled by the body's internal processes, by the internal environment of our body. So the autonomic system is that system which controls this and coordinates this internal environment, the internal organs. So these are the organs which will determine obviously the physiological processes. Like the heart is, it is not controlled in our hands. It is controlled in the autonomic by the autonomic system, right? The kidneys, the GI tract, the lungs, everything is in the control of the brain and the autonomic system, not by our voluntary control. So the autonomic system, it is given in anxiety. There's of two types: sympathetic, parasympathetic system. And the way your body is in, if your body is in flight or fight mode if it's in some danger. The sympathetic system gets activated if your body is in the normal routine life where it is not facing any dangers. Then the parasympathetic system is activated, and the uh, depending on in what state your body is, the autonomic system would function that way. Like if you are in a flight or fight mode, if you are in danger, your contraction of heart would increase because your body needs more blood. Your muscles need more blood to maybe fight or run from the uh, place or from the situation, right? So that way your sympathetic system will get activated and will increase the heartbeat of your body, right? So that way the physiological processes are altered basically by the autonomic system based on the situation you are in, based on what deficiency your body has, based on if you're exercising, if you're sleeping. So I would say autonomic system is the system which determines majorly all the processes, physiological processes of the body. Now, okay, thank you.